Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and welcome to the next video in this Rails View build. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to first queue up the Rails server. So Rails server, let that get started. So that's doing its thing. And I already got the Notes app opened up over here. Let me just close all these files, open them up again. So here's my front end. So mainly I need my index.html and my app.js right now. So last we left off, I had it where I can log in. So Alex Merced, pineapple. Okay. And right now it displays all my notes, and I'm able to create a new note. Blah, 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 blah. And there it is. Okay, so that's working. So all we need to do is get these delete and update buttons working, and then we have CRUD. There's a few other things I want to do before we get to styling, but we're getting there. Okie dokie. So first let's create a delete function. So let me just think here. What do I want to do? This.notes.id. So what I probably want to do is give this button the ID of the note. So note.id. Same thing with the update button. ID equals note.id, and that has to be 2 curly brackets. And actually, no, that's not even the right way to do that. I have to do vbind. So vbind ID equals note.id. And then same thing over here. So that way they have the ID. Now let me just double check to make sure that that's the case. Let me refresh this. Log in. Alex Merced. Pineapple. And having to log in each time, we will deal with that in an eventual video. That requires us to take advantage of something called local storage or session storage. Okay, and let's see here. Let's go to the elements. Let's go to the div. Let's go here. And yes, the buttons have the ID of 1. Good. And then if I go to the next one, that one has the ID of 5. Perfect. That's what we need. Okay, so now let's create the delete function. So let me go to my app.js. Let me just make this bigger. Okay, and let's go all the way to the end of my methods. So create note. Just see where that starts. That starts here and it's there. So the next one should be, here we go, delete note. Okay, and first let's just test out whether this gets the event in the first place. So event, because view's a little bit different, so I just want to make sure this works the way I think it does. Event, and what I want to do is I want to console.log the event.target.id, which should be the button's ID, because the target is what I clicked on. So that's the function. Now let's bind that function to the delete button. So the delete button is going to have a v on click equals delete note. I think that's what I called it. Delete note, yes. Okay, so let's give that a shot. Let's refresh. Alex Merced, pineapple. Okay, and let's try it out. Let's take a look at the console. I'll try to delete this hello. I'll try to delete 2. Okay, good, that works. Okay, so then this will be easy. Okay, so then what I want to do is instead of console logging it, I'm going to say const ID equals event.targetID. Just get that number right out of the way. That ID. I also want the URL, so I'm going to do this again. Okay, so I'm gonna put that line in there too. Cool. Const event.target.id. Good. Let's see here. Now what am I thinking? Oh, you just need to make the call. So fetch, and again that's going to be to URL. We'll have to use backticks. URL / notes, and then that's actually notes / the ID / ID. And then we make the fetch. So its method is delete. Then I think that is it. Oh, we need the token. So we need the headers. And the headers need to have the authorization token or it won't work. Okay, so then the authorization equals backticks bearer, has to have the word bearer in it, just the way it works. And then the token, this dot token. And that works pretty well for me. We don't need to send a body, so we don't need to send in a content type header, so that should do the job. Okay, so let's try this out. Oh, wait, actually I should, right now it just deletes it. I need to make sure that it updates the thing. So what's that get notes function again? Get notes. Okay, so then what I need to do is then here this dot get notes, so that way it gets the updated list of notes, and now the function is done. Okay, and then this should be ID. Match the variable name. Okay, so again it's the URL, then the endpoint. It makes a delete request, deletes that one. That all makes sense to me. Let's refresh. I have to log in again. Alex Merced, pineapple. And let's delete this one. Something gonna go right there. Did we make the delete request? .204, no content. Let's refresh. Alex Merced, pineapple. It did delete it, it just didn't update. Let's try this again. Oh, and I know why. Same reason it was before. I didn't use the .then. .then response. And then again, I don't care about the response. I just need this to happen after the previous thing happens. So Control X. Because if I don't put it in the .then this is gonna run before that fetch request is done, which means it's gonna get the exact same list again. So it won't pick up on the new list until I delete another thing or do something else. So that was the issue there. So refresh. Alex Merced, pineapple. Let's delete cheese 89. And that worked. Let's delete one of the 2 cheese 55s. And that worked. Good. Okay, so far so good. Now there are some ways we can do update note. Like one way I did it once before is that each one got their own form that was collapsed, and then hitting the update button would actually like trigger a true or false that makes the form appear. Just for the sake of time, I'm just going to make an update form that they all share. So what I want is an update form. So I'm going to just copy this because it's essentially the same setup. And it's going to be update note. Update note. Okay, so it's going to be update note. Will be the item. Oh, yeah. Update note. We'll call the function edit note. And then we'll just say the button says update note. Okay, so that should do that part. And just to make it more visible for you guys, I will do that so you can kind of see what I did there. So see, this is the create. So now if we go back to the screen here and I do a refresh. Oh, it doesn't like something. Oh, it's because I didn't put this stuff in there yet. So let's go do that first. So first I need to add a variable for the form, update note, that's first, which will just be an empty string for that form input because that's what it's binding to. And then I need to create the method. Okay, and that should be ending here. So then the next one should go here, and it's going to be edit note, function. I need the event. So let me go grab that out there. The delete's going to start. This is 90% of this is going to be the same, so I might as well copy this. That's the delete function. Just make sure I'm copying the right stuff. Just want that. Control C. There we go. Because it's still, you still need to get the URL. We still need to get the ID. We're still making a fetch request. The only difference is that now it's a post request. I mean a put request. And the authorization bearer, that all still chimes in. The only thing we have to do is add a few other things. But first I need the thing, the updated note. So const updated equals an object where the message is this dot update note. Okay, because again, that's what the API is expecting an object, and the property is called message, not update note. So I gotta make sure I send it back a object that looks like what it expects. So that's there. I need to add the content type header. So content type, and the reason I gotta put in quotation marks is because of that hyphen in the middle. Application JSON. Then we need the body, and the body is just JSON.stringify updated. So that should send the proper request to update the note. Then after the dot then, that's done, the dot then triggers running get notes again, which should update the list of notes. So that should be all fine and good now. So update should be, well, not quite yet, because I just realized that update button has to do something else first. So that function is fine, but that's not the function that goes here. Oh, I mean, it does go there, but I need one to actually send the form from the edit button on each individual item. Because right now, let's refresh this. I'm still complaining. Let's see here. Error compiling template, invalid expression, or token in update note. Okay, let's go look at the HTML. Update note. Oh, I forgot a quotation mark. Okay, so basically we created this function, edit note, for when we update the form, but we need something to populate that form with the existing data. So what I need to do is create a function for this button. So what I'm going to do is do v on, I'm going to say edit select, or I mean click, v on click equals, and we'll call a function called edit select. Okay, then I gotta think about what I want to do there. Oh, I know what I want to do. Cool. And I need to bind the ID of this too to get the right ID. So where is that button? This needs an ID because I just realized in my function I'm grabbing the ID, but the button I'm clicking is this button, not the button that actually has an ID already. So, because again, just to kind of illustrate this, let's just make sure this is working again yet. Yep. Alex Merced, pineapple. So we've assigned an ID to all these update buttons. But that function we just wrote the updates attached to this button, which doesn't have an ID. So that function is not going to quite work the way that we want. So this button works and this form works, but I need to have this update button take this text and put it in there, and I need to make sure that this button has the right ID. So that's what I'm doing now. So in that button, I'm going to do vbind, because that binds any property to whatever. Vbind ID equals, and we'll call it edit ID. Okay. Cool. And now we go take care of those things. So I need to add edit select as a function, and I need to add edit ID as a property. So let's take care of those two things in my view instance. So let's go back first to our data bucket. And nope, still not. Oh, here we go. So I need to add edit ID, which will just start off as 0. Let me just make sure that I do this right thing. Yeah, edit ID. Then I have to create a function called edit select. Edit select, and then edit select. Let's see here. Let's think about this for a second. Edit select. And this is where it starts, like, see how like this one view instance is getting bigger? This is where it starts making sense to have like sub view instances or components. So that way it's not all one big giant instance. But again, if you're new to Vue, this is probably the easiest way to just get used to the syntax without having to think too hard about sort of like, okay, what data is where when you start having multiple instances or multiple components. But edit select function. Okay, edit select function. What do I want this to do? I'm going to want the event, because what I want is we're going to take this dot. Let me think here. Now I know I want this dot edit ID to equal the event dot target ID, or edit ID, or yeah, ID. Okay, so that works. That's going to change the button to have the ID. Now what I'm trying to think of how to grab the text from that H1. Or do I need to grab the text from the H1? Because theoretically, I have the full list of notes hanging out in this notes variable. It's just hanging out there until it gets updated. So technically, I could refer to that. Just trying to think if there was a more suave way, but this might work. This might work. I'll just do a find in there. So what I can do is just do message. So const message equals this dot post. It's notes. This dot notes. So I'm going to this dot notes. I want to use the find method. And then what I need to do is find, we'll say, the note where the note equals where basically the note dot ID equals this dot edit ID. Okay, so basically, does it equal the one that we're trying to edit? Now I don't need the whole object, I just need the message. So it'd be dot message. It should get me that. And actually I don't even need to do that, I can just do this. This dot update note, because that's the form field. I should have probably named that something that's a little bit more clear, but that's the form field. So that way it just sets the form field immediately to that. And that's all I really wanted to do. So that way that form field can do what I want it to do. So now that should take care of that. So let's go take a look. Let's refresh. Alex Merced. Pineapple. Okay, first let me click on hello. That way we can see if it works. Oh, nope, that didn't quite work exactly the way I want. Cannot read property message of undefined. Okay, so let's do this. Let's see if I'm actually grabbing the right note. Let me think about this. First, let's console log edit ID. See if that's getting what we needed to get. Okay, and we're console logging event.target.id. Making sure that's what it should be. And what I'm going to do is we'll do this in multiple steps. So first we'll just get the whole note. So const the note. And let's just see if we're getting the right note. Console.log the note. So let's just make sure this is doing what I think it's doing. So is it actually assigning the right number to edit ID? This is question number 1. And question number 2 is when I do this whole find function, is it returning me the actual correct note? Am I using it correctly? So Alex Merced, pineapple. Okay, let's click on update here. So it's editing the ID correctly. So the find function is where I need to do some work. Let me just think about how this should be working. So let's just make sure I'm doing this right. So let's go note. So make this function a little bit more explicit. Let's console.log the note. And then return if note, because the way it works is that it should, I'm passing in this boolean, I'm returning whether note ID equals this dot edit ID, and technically the time that that's true, it should return me that object. That's kind of what it's doing. It's like, is it true? If it's false, go to the next one. If it's false, go to the next one. Oh, it's true, return that. Okay, so let's see here, let's refresh. Alex Merced, pineapple. Let's click on update. Okay. So the object does have a property called message. This says hello. User ID is 1. That's not what ID is 1. Yeah, so that should match. So it's the second one, and then so we got the ID. So I'm assuming that then probably what I did is I just maybe spelt it wrong. I don't know. Okay, so that find function's working the way I expect it to. The note is what I think it should be. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this console log. We don't need this anymore. Oh, I'm going to get rid of just that console log, and then this is going to turn into this dot update note equals the note dot message, and that's what it should. Okay, so again, let me just put this up there for a second. So again, what we're doing is we're taking the ID and making sure the ID of the update form matches the ID of the individual update button, which should be the ID of that individual item. Then we are grabbing the note from our list of notes based on the ID using the find function, and then saying, hey, the form should reflect the message of that note. Okay, so let's refresh. Alex Merced, pineapple. Let's see here, update. Okay, that works. And let's see this now. Let's try updating it. So update shark. Oh, hello shark. And ta-da, it works. Okay, good. Because again, when I click this button, it says this button is now going to have the same ID as this button, and then we're going to go look inside the list of notes and update this form with that particular note. So if I click update again, see that changes to hello 2, and then if I edit this, hello dogs, hit update note, that's going to become hello dogs. Okay, because it has the ID, and then my function is using that ID to figure out, okay, how to send the fetch request. So that is pretty cool. Okay, so that means we have full CRUD. We have an app that works. So the next step is going to be, actually probably the next video will be local storage, so that way you can see how you can make the logins persistent, which is actually not that hard. And then we'll do styling and then deployment. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Ciao.